It was just Lee Buncombe from procurement who sent apologies.
Okay, thank you. Point 2, declarations of interest.
I've not been notified of any.
Thank you. Kirsty?
I just want to reiterate the interests that are already recorded, but I am the chair of Cardiff and Vale University Health Board, and that organisation is referenced in the papers today.
Thank you, Kirsty. And I have nothing further to add than my already noted declarations of interest. I don't have any chairperson's announcement in 3, so I'll go straight to 4 to receive the minutes of the Finance and Audit Committee held on the 20th of March 2026. I don't intend to go through these page by page. What I will say is, if at this point, does anyone have any omissions, alterations, addendums to add to those printed minutes, please?
No.
None? Thank you. In that case, we'll move straight on to point 5, update on outstanding actions. There are many actions closed in this paper. Again, I don't intend to spend time on those, but we will just look at the current status of those that are not closed. Kirsty.
Thank you. It's really good to see so many actions closed. I think sometimes action logs can become a bit of a beast. So I think it's really good to see us trying to clear the decks on the ones that have been. And I'm satisfied that the ones that are still open are appropriate, and we are either on the forward work programme or papers are to be taken shortly. So I'm content with the action log as it stands.
That's great. Thank you so much. So we'll just start with, I'll just do that first one, Internal Audit Update Strategic Procurement Board. So the update is our Director of Finance has met with equivalents, and this will be progressed late into quarter 2 and early quarter 3. Anything further, Liam?
No, it's as the update says there, Chair. Given the summer period and availability of leave, we'll pick this up in early September now and get a schedule. Okay,
well, I'll just move through to the action closed ones to the next one, which is update on KPIs, local performance indicators. And we've got Mike Wyatt attending the meeting to provide an update.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Fortunately for me, this work was already ongoing, so we were carrying out a full review of the service response time. So I have provided a paper with some quite detailed analysis. In addition to that paper, after reading the paper, I've also added the control handling time. So there's an updated paper which I'll share after the meeting. So after reading, I recognised there was that slight gap. If you look at the turnout, hold time 2 minutes 9, the on-call duty system 7 minutes. The key point to note in particular with the on-call, most are on a 5-minute turnout, so they should be responding within that 5 minutes. There's a number of reasons for that, including the 30 to 20 change, but also it depends on the time of day whether there's going to be increased traffic or not, and also roadworks. There's a number of factors. You also got to remember that currently with the on-call, recruitment is quite difficult. So you're now pushing probably the boundaries of where people live. So you can see it's had an effect, but I think we can almost break that down now into a station level so we can start taking corrective action, particularly on those stations with that prolonged turnout area. This also forms a KPI in their monthly returns. So every command is reporting on their delayed response, but also their timing. So they're giving us that overview per month so we can start to take corrective action where needed. I think I could almost come to the recommendations. Now we've identified the issue, we now need to take the corrective action. I think one of the main areas which we need to focus on is pre-alert. So what isn't in your report, but it's now become available, is the actual call handling times. So the call handling times vary. If I just pull that up, give me a second. 2 minutes. It's broken down into each category. Some categories take longer than others, particularly water, where they're starting to prepare the boats, etc. But call handling overall is 3 minutes 15. So that's from someone calling the fire brigade to then control mobilising that appliance. Water rescue, there's all sorts of categories which I'll mention, but one of the key points from this is we need to look at putting in a pre-alert. So once they're dealing with a call, pre-alert the stations can then get ready, get all the equipment, they can be mobilised earlier, so that 7 minutes should drop below 5 minutes. So it's how we do it. So that is my key takeaway from this. But again, it's on our monthly performance indicators. This is going to be identified in the performance meetings, and I'm expecting to see an improvement as we go through the year. And again, I can quite happily report on that. So if I pause there, I don't know if there's any questions in relation to any of those points.
Kirsty, no? Anyone else in the room? No. Mike, I mean, that was, you know, a very comprehensive, and I think evident that we're in a better place than we were with this, which is always what we're looking for, that continuous improvement. So I take advice from Amanda. Would we say this action is now closed, or are we putting it ongoing?
I've just noted that Mike has so we circulated his initial findings with you. We'll send an updated version to include the control handling time as well. And I think once that's been sent to you, I'll put that in the update and we can mark it as closed.
That's great. Thank you so much. All right, let's move on then, please, to the next one, which is the strategic risks report. And the latest update we had on that the work with Resilium is ongoing. The new approach to risk will be reported to the new governance structure and appear in the forward work plan, likely to be first reported in the autumn of 2026. Amanda, I assume with that update that is then another action that's closed?
I would probably keep it open until we send you a first report on the new approach, if that's okay. Wayne and I are working on the continuing work with Resilium. We're going to be training our staff more about the new approach, and we're hoping that a final quarter of this year will be reported to you in the new format. It might be an 80-20 approach at that time. If we wait until it's perfect, we'll never start using it, but you have to kick it off at some point. So I think we're aiming towards the last quarter of the year. So I'll keep that open for now, but hopefully you'll have an update soon.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds good. Any other comments? Okay, let's move on then. So that's that agenda item done. Sorry, I'm using two screens here. So we now move on to reports for information and insurance. And number 6 is the internal audit update. So Liam, I guess you're doing this, yeah?
Yes, I'll take this one, Chair. So there's 3 aspects to this report. The first one is looking at the internal audit annual report for 25-26, which includes the annual opinion of the head of internal audit. Steen is with us this afternoon, so I'll hand over to Steen shortly to give his view on that. And then I'll give an update on progress against this year's internal audit plan, recognising that we only signed the plan off in May, so there's very limited progress at this stage, but that's expected and in line with the plan. And then I will outline how the internal audit service will be managed going forward and some additional control and reporting mechanisms we've included since I've come into the role. But I'll hand over to Steen first off, and he can talk us through the head of internal audit's annual report.
Okay, thank you, Liam. Steen, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So this is our annual report. It concludes the work for the year. I think the head of internal opinion is probably where to start. In previous years, we were given a full reasonable assurance, but this year, because of the 4 limited assurance reports that we've given, there's an extra paragraph in there that kind of qualifies that. I think every year we say that we can't give you full assurance. That's impossible because of for various reasons, including We're not your only source of assurance, we only audit at a point in time. All those things remain true, and I think we need to give a balanced view when things aren't quite so well in terms of the outcomes for the year, in terms of the audits we have to take. So I think that's probably a balanced view based on commitment for the recommendations that we have made in the audit assurance reports to be implemented in the coming years, in the coming year going forward. This year we've included an extra appendix, Annex A, which gives you a kind of a flavour of the types of findings and the areas that were concerns, but also some of the actions that we need to take to address those. And I think hopefully you found that useful, because that kind of ties the opinion back to some of the outcomes for the year as well. The outcomes for each of the audits can translate then. So there's 7 reasonable and 4 limited, as I mentioned. That has led to an increase in the number of recommendations this year because of those limited assurance. So that's where you can see the differences between the last year and this in terms of the outcomes. Typically, as with all of our clients, their recommendations focus around governance, so that's policies and procedures, policy compliance. Though there are an increasing number for each of those, and I think that's common across all of our clients. The thing that kind of jumps out at us in terms of those root cause indicators, really. I'll stop there and take any questions.
Yeah, I'll just start, Steen, with the is this the most limited outcome we've had in the couple of years that the commissioners have been here? It seems slightly worse to me, or am I misreading it?
No, that's correct, Lady Lawfax. I think last year there were 2 limited assurance, but this year there are 4. And part of that, I think, is that when we sat down a couple of years ago to look at the plan, some of the areas that we knew that there were problems in, we built into perhaps future years. So I think we've done those audits now, and probably we knew that were going to be areas for improvement. But yes, it's the first time we've had to put that caveat in.
I thought so. Kirsty, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Steen. I think Steen makes a good point. Whilst it is always disappointing to have limited assurance, in some way it demonstrates that we were choosing the right areas to ask internal audit to look at. Because it's easy to get a 100% hit rate if you choose the areas where you already have confidence in and you know you're going to get a good result. The fact that we identified areas that subsequently could give us only limited assurance tells us that we are certainly asking the right questions of ourselves and are targeting areas where we have identified potentially when we're not assured that it is going as well as it needs to. So whilst it's disappointing, I also think it is an indicator of our realism and our focusing the efforts of internal audit in the right areas. I guess what's crucial to me, and I guess Liam will come to this in part 3, is how do we then get proper assurance that having had a limited assurance audit, those recommendations then are responded to, and we use internal audit as an improvement mechanism. But I guess we'll get to that. But I just want to say, whilst it's disappointing, I also think there is a good explanation as to why potentially we've ended up where we are. Thank you.
Thanks. Any further comments, please, from officers?
Not from me. I think that's a fair assessment, both from Steve and from commissioners. So if I move on then to the second item, which is progress against the 26-27 internal audit plan. The field work for 2 reviews has been undertaken, and these relate to sickness absence management and home fire safety audits. And if commissioners remember back to the last meeting, they were 2 that were highlighted to be prioritised and brought forward, so that the fieldwork for those has been done. Draft reports have been issued, and it's just in the finalisation process, so we'll be able to provide further detail to you on those reviews. very shortly. And then moving on then to arrangements for managing the internal audit service. So if I look at the controls around the reviews themselves first off, so going forward, the relevant director and head of service will be involved from the outset alongside myself with the scoping meetings to make sure that we've got the right people in the room, the scope is absolutely what we need them, the auditors to be looking at, and there's buy-in across the directorate as well. Closure meetings then will again include the lead director and the head of service, as well as myself, sitting in on the closure meetings to ensure that the findings are fully understood and agreed. And the draft reports will be reviewed by the lead director, head of service and myself again before being finalised. So there's controls being implemented at the outset, then in that closure meeting, but then a sort of check and challenge on some of the management responses going back, and most importantly the timelines associated with those management responses as well. So that's how I think we can tighten up the process of the reviews themselves. And then it's moving on to Commissioner Williams's point around monitoring arrangements. So all final audit reports will be shared with the planning, performance and risk team for central oversight, as happens at the moment. But what we are introducing is I will meet with that team on a monthly basis and they'll give me updates against progress on outstanding recommendations. I will take that on a quarterly basis to the executive leadership team, and I report that through the Finance and Audit Committee as well. So there'll be much greater visibility of recommendations and their implementation or failure to do so. That will be brought to both ELT and to the new Governance and Audit Committee rather than Finance and Audit Committee going forward.
Thank you, Liam. Kirsty.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Liam. Liam, I think that sounds like a really good proposal, so that there is greater oversight and assurance on the implementation of findings. So thank you. I think that sounds like a really positive way forward, and grateful.
Yeah, it's joining the dots, isn't it? Okay, so our recommendations are to note the internal audit report, to note progress against the internal audit plan, and to note detail of how it will be managed going forward. So I think we've agreed on that. Yep. Okay, thank you. In that case, thank you very much, Steen. I don't know if you're staying for the rest of the meeting, but you're very welcome. It's quite unusual that we're online and you're there. It's usually the other way around, but there we are. You never know what's going to happen on a Friday afternoon. So we move on now to point 7, which is the revenue outturn report, and I think that's Lisa. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So Commissioners have received budget monitoring reports throughout the last financial year 25-26. So they would have focused on looking at what the 31st of March position would have been, how that impacted service delivery and how that would have impacted things like financial resilience, or otherwise known as reserves. So you've received 4 of those reports throughout last year. So this report is different in the way that it's an outturn report as opposed to a budget monitoring report. Yeah. So, you know, the 31st of March, as we know, has occurred. So we know where that position is. So this report more focuses on looking at the difference between the budget set and the final position. And as part of that, looking at any structural budgeting issues that we need to pick up for future budget setting. That's the really good learning that comes out of an analysis such as this. And then this report also confirms the impact on reserves of the closing financial year. Really important for us in terms of our longer term financial planning going forward. So, like I said, the 31st of March has passed. The FD has presented the statutory statement of accounts this morning, and that's the formal document that closes off the financial year. And that more gives you an accounting position as opposed to this report here. This gives you the running budget end position. So it's different from that point of view. It concentrates on the general fund. So it's less technical and it's less voluminous and it's more practical in focus. So I won't read through the whole report. I trust everybody has read it. There's some big changes there. I think the first thing to highlight is there is an overspend this year. It's the second time in my 19 years that we've overspent. It's 508,000, and we know why that is. The cost of improvement, there is one. It comes with a price tag. That is consistent with the picture that we presented with commissioners throughout the year. So we didn't think it was going to be that low, but we did report consistently an overspend throughout the year. So that overspend comprises 1.5 million against employee budgets. There's been some big changes there. 237 underspend on non-employee budgets. So that's everything else from premises through to supplies and services and capital financing. And then there's been 803, quite a big number, of additional income in the year. And that's what's got us to that end 508 overspend position. So the key areas are full-time overspend of 845. That is offset by the underspend on on-call. An additional underspend on industrial action planning adds to that. But then we see the overspends coming in corporate staffing areas, and that's largely to do with agency staff. They do cost us more on a daily rate basis. They come at a premium. We've had to do that to fill gaps in some really pressing areas. Statutory finance was one such area. And page 37 runs through the most significant impacts there. One such area, again, change and transformation, not in the budget. Like I said, this is a price tag of improvement that we put in place. And the other significant area that's actually really adding to that overspend position is the overtime budget, the overtime spend. So that 950 overspend, largely attributable to the new overtime project, is what's driving that salary overspend there. We've had many, many years of overspending on home time, with on-call sort of covering that off. What's new this year is that overtime project that was stated in April, Mike, I think, wasn't it? Beginning of April. So we tried it, it didn't work. We've called it to a halt, and that is not worked into future budgets. You've got some smaller spends there on pensions. That's logical. It tends to track overspends on salaries. So if you're going to overspend on salaries, you're going to get an overspend on pensions. And then the bigger areas then of non-salaries is premises, and energy being the most significant there. So just for commissioner awareness, we look at things like this, and we look at what's the pattern of spend over the last couple of years, what's the contract saying in terms of trying to get an anticipated position. And we've made a reduction there of more than half of that underspend, and we've used that to supplement other areas of pressure during budget setting for 26-27. So moving on to supplies and services, you've got some less significant areas there, and they're all identified there on page 38 to 39. We had some overspends in respect of frontline equipment. We knew they were coming through the thematic reviews, and there was already a planned approach there that we would fund the overspends and investment in those areas with the equipment replacement reserve. So we set that up specifically 2 to 3 years ago. Commissioners will be aware there was a £2 million reserve set up to take the lumps and bumps out of those pressing areas for us that really needed to progress because of the thematic reviews that we were experiencing, and that are part of your terms of reference. 4.24 is a strange one. We don't account for depreciation in the budget. I think that is a misnomer in terms of these transport costs. With the introduction of IFRS 16, anything that's off balance sheet, so a rental, a hire purchase, a lease, under the accounting rules, you sort of take that service cost out and you put it back in. The cost is the same, but you represent that in terms of service element, interest element, repayment of debt, because with any HP lease rental agreement, you're going to have some implicit borrowing there. So basically the costs have moved from transport there, it's quite a big underspend of 484, and I think the actual figure was 457, so it includes something else down in capital financing. So commissioners won't be seeing that moving forward in future years. IFRS now is embedded, IFRS 16 that is, and we will be making the relevant changes in the budget representation to reflect that. Loan costs are what they are. I think that, you know, we based it on assumption at the beginning of the year, and that was predicated on inflation rates, as borrowing rates are. We thought inflation was going to come down quicker than it is. It's currently sitting at 2.6. So the assumptions were based on a much higher rate and larger borrowing. And there's two things that are driving that. That's just the general economic market, but also the rate of spending in the capital budget. And then there's an explanation there of that quite large additional income there of 803. The impact is we've got an overspend of 508, and 182 of that is going to be funded from the change management reserve, because there is an agreement that 3 million is what we are going to allow the general reserve to sit at. My understanding is the FD is going to look at the reserve policy in the coming period and review whether those amounts still are appropriate. So 182 from there, and then the rest relating to the equipment replacement reserve, the 326, to come from that specific 2 million that we've earmarked for. I think all said, this year has been a bit of a journey. You know, the best plans, just for commissioners' awareness, and you will appreciate this, I know, best plans change and flex, and always has during the year. The budget is set at a point in time, and things change as a result of that, and it's things like contract pricing will change every time you renew a contract. We'll also have new contracts coming into play, and there'll be things that we just don't know at budget setting and are pending. So I think I leave it there for now and take any questions that commissioners have got on that report.
Thanks. I'll start, and then I'll bring Kirsty in. First of all, Lisa, thank you very much, because you know, I've interrogated the figures as best as I can, and as ever, everything looks good. So thank you for all the hard work that's gone into doing that. I'll reiterate again, and I've said this many times, when previous public services have been put in special measures, which is effectively what Welsh Government did, bringing us in 2.5 years ago, they would have a fund to go with it. You didn't have a fund. So the change and transformation has, including the appointment of the 4 commissioners, has had to be funded from South Wales Fire. I will continue to press, we will continue to press Welsh Government on this matter, because there is an inherent unfairness within that about having to pay when other public bodies who have been in similar circumstances have had grant funding to help in that change and transformation, which hasn't been cheap and hasn't been easy. And within that, I would say that what we would be looking at with the overspend, which has come down considerably, because it was much more when we were looking at it earlier in the year. So, you know, well done for bringing that down. We are, you know, but going forward, and as the budget round starts in earnest in local government in September, I would urge, from our viewpoint and our standpoint and these figures, that we must be looking at our 10 constituent authorities to be giving us more. Because if we can't run our service on these figures, then clearly our precept needs to be more reasonable and, you know, within the constraints that we have. But we were very careful when we asked for that 2.99 uplift for the last financial year. So, you know, we need to look at these figures again, and we need to put our case forcibly And if we look what happened in Gwyler de Garth yesterday, which was completely unknown, and the service was there like a shot dealing with that flood and that terrible situation for the residents of Gwyler de Garth. We just need to and the fires and everything's been going on. We just need to remind our constituent authorities what an excellent service we provide, and actually we're very careful with every penny we spend. So 2 issues: special measures, we didn't have any money, and we asked for a very reasonable amount of uplift last year, which on these figures show we need to ask for more. Kirsty.
Thank you very much, and thank you to Lisa and her colleagues for the report. I guess the question that is there anything in the deficit position that we've found ourselves in that kind of is structural? I guess, in any one year, events happen, you spend accordingly, but what becomes really challenging is if that, there are structural issues that are driving that deficit. And I'm just seeking assurance about, about that. And then secondly, Lisa, you said that the Director of Finance is looking to review reserves policy. I'd be grateful to know, Liam, about what the timescale for that work is, please.
If I come in on that point first, Commissioner, so that will be tied in with the budget setting for this year and the development of a medium-term financial strategy. Specifically, I'll be looking at the general fund, which is £3 million, for an organisation the size and scale of the budget that we've got. I think that's too low. Traditionally, that would be more around the 5% mark, which would be up by another couple of £1 million, I would say. So while we are not in an unhealthy position from a reserve point of view, many of the reserves that we've got are earmarked for specific purposes, as you would suggest. It's that general fund balance which is mainly kept for a very, very rainy day. And that's a little bit under where I would expect it to be from a financial resilience point of view. But yeah, to answer your question, as part of budget setting, so we'll have discussions through the autumn, and that'll be included in the paper in December.
Good. Okay.
And then just on the second question, Lisa might want to add to this, but I think the overspend on employees, whilst a large part of that was due to the overtime trial, then that is leaking over into 26, 27 as well. We had a paper this morning on the overtime duty system and the costs associated with that. The overtime trial leaked into April as well, so there was some in-year impact of that. We're still having issues with agency staff, and some of which is linked to sickness absence, which again we discussed this morning. So yeah, structural overspend around employees is not going away anytime soon, I would say. So that's something we do need to bear in mind this year. Lisa, I'm not sure if there's anything else you want to add to that.
No, not really. I think, but commissioners are aware of any major structural issues we went through during the budget setting. In terms of the deficit, Liam's quite right. The probably anomaly this year or during 25-26 was the overtime budget, and we've probably got a hangover of about 3 weeks in there this year. But we hope to see things settle down with staffing and the establishment. It's been a strange and unusual few years for us, so looking for more stability.
I think that's a very good point, Lisa. It's been a strange couple of years for all of us, but let's hope that strangeness is now going to be bottomed out moving forward. But thanks again. It's the bedrock of every organisation, the finance, because nothing can operate without it. So thank you very much. If there's nothing further on this item, we note it, and we'll move on to the next item, which I think is Liam, and it is the capital Oh no, it's still Lisa, capital outturn report. Lisa, thank you.
Yes, it is me. So capital outturn, the preamble applies again. You've had the monitoring reports. This is the outturn different. It's a look between the structure of the budget and the final position of the 31st March. A little bit different to the revenue budget. The capital budget has got our legacy sort of look. So with the revenue budget, we start every year from a zero position. The slate is wiped clean at the end of the year, and it's start again. With capital, these items sit on our balance sheet, so they are enduring items and they form part of our fixed asset categories of property, fleet, ICT infrastructure and big projects, ICT projects. So we don't start zero with every year. Balance sheet is cumulative in that respect and falls forward. So in summary, the total budget for last year was 15 million and we actually spent 6.6 million. And there was this small overspend of 1.5 million in relation to some unbudgeted items. Most of those would have been funded through grants. So some grants are treated as a windfall basis and they wouldn't be included in budget setting, but they would equate to an overspend because they're not planned and they would be offset with that funding then in the year. There's slippage into 26-27 or 27-28 rather of 10 million for next year. There's a little grid on the top of page 52 that gives a summary of what the budget is, and usefully then it breaks down out of that 15 million what was the in-year allocation, and that was 4.934, and what was slippage, and that was 10.2. Useful from the point of view, I guess, that when you see that the slippage we brought forward from 24-25 of 10 million, we've spent 3 million of that. That represents 30%. So we're only spending 30% of that budget. So what does that tell us? That's all what, isn't it? It tells us that the fire cover review and the CRMP they're having an impact on us while we put our foot on the ball and we work out and establish what our plans are, our longer term plans, because this stuff, like I said, these assets we invest in are with us for an awfully long time, and you'll be aware of some of the property plans that sort of are adding up to that large slippage figure. So I think that for me going forward, this sort of features in budget setting in the way that we've got quite a large slippage there going forward into the new year of 10 million. I wouldn't necessarily be looking for just as large capital budget to sit on top of that, I guess, because there's only so much capacity in the organisation to deliver on some of those projects. Underneath in that grid, it actually shows the financing of that capital expenditure, and counter effect of that is if you're spending less, you need to borrow less. So fairly self-explanatory. Then you've got all the individual summaries of the capital schemes running through from the middle of page 52 through to page 54. The financing of capital investment, as you know, sits in the revenue budget, as we just discussed. And the only other thing to bring to your attention there, that 1.5 million of overspend is on table at the top of 55. It sort of breaks that down into, out of 1.5, nearly £1 million is grant funded, so that just supports my point earlier. There's a £34,000 underspend, and there's actually only a 575 true overspend, and we've been able to cover that off with the slowing of pace of spend in other areas. So it's not actually going to cost us any more, not going to push us over for the end of last year. I think that is possibly it. You've got Appendix 1, which summarises the year look on page 57, and it adds up to the 6.6 million spent. You've got the 1.5 million overspend and the 10.1 slippage, and then you've also got, similar to revenue on page 59, all the reported positions throughout the year, which is a bit more static in the capital budget. You can see we started with 15 million, immediately then we've gone down to 8 million and then 7. So there's a bit of a trend with capital. We start quite high and then we sort of diminish throughout the year. And some of that is the nature of the items have got longer lead times and can fall either within or outside of that 31st of March cut-off point, as we call it in finance. So I think that's really all I want to say about that. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah, sorry, it's loads and loads of figures in this, isn't it? But you know, good explanation. Thank you. I've got nothing for a minute. Kirsty, no? Anything to add, Liam, or can we round this off?
No, nothing from me, Lily. Look, yeah, as we described, it's a lot of slippage. A lot of that is planned. Ultimately, when we look at financial cover review, and you know, big change in landscape. Some of the papers that we discussed this morning in the capital area as well over the next few years. Yeah.
Well, we just keep an eye on it. You know, it's all there. It's all there in the public domain. All the figures are there, and we are. We note the paper and we note that we are content with what we've been presented with. And thank you very much for all the hard work that's gone into it. So we move on to the next item, which is the update on KPIs. Is that Wayne?
It is, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. So, yes, Commissioners, this is a report that outlines the service's performance against a list of strategic key performance indicators for Q1 of 2026 and 2027. These have previously been agreed at the Board of Commissioners on the 13th of February. And as you'll see in the report, there are 49 indicators that we bring here to yourselves. And then rest assured, there's a further 35 that we add to these, talk about at our quarterly strategic performance management meetings. And start with a caveat. Obviously, with it being Q1 and the timing of this meeting, the quarterly strategic performance meeting hasn't occurred based on timing, so that's happening in 2 weeks' time. However, I only raised that because, again, it was the emphasis on bringing current and live information for you for discussions. The conversations around bringing Q4 data into this meeting were actually bringing Q1 data in without that scrutiny. And I think, again, hopefully there'll be quite a lot of useful information in that report for yourselves. So I think it's interesting. I raised that again, so I wanted to thank officers and their teams for being so proactive in getting that information to us. And while the service is on a digital transformation journey, the information isn't always available with a click of a button. So the officers and their teams have been very proactive in getting us that information, and also the quality of the narratives that come with that has enabled this report to be put together. And also, if there's any information in the report that is in there I don't have today, I'm more than happy to bring that to yourselves outside the meeting. So going on to the report itself, page 3 outlines how all 49 of the key performance indicators are mapped across the current 8 strategic themes the organisation plans the business against. So it talks about what areas of performance they're looking at. And then the following page looks at how performance is assigned. So it goes through good, could do better, poor, and then monitor. And the monitored ones are ones where we either don't have previous year information, don't have a projection, or they're indicators that we deem are relatively out of our control. But the definitions are on page 4. Of the 49 during Q1, 15 were assessed to be performing well, 5 were assessed to be performing adequately with room for improvement, 9 were assessed to be performing poorly, and 20 were assigned the monitored definition and based on how we've categorised them. The remainder of the report then goes through each of the 8 strategic themes, and every one of the 49 performance indicators is in there, and underneath you'll see some narrative. I won't go through every one of the key performance indicators. I'm aware there's a lot of them, but in each strategic theme I can give hopefully a few key areas of performance that we have been looking at. So in terms of prevention, which is the first strategic theme, you'll notice that the number of home safety checks conducted has improved by 20% compared to the corresponding period of last year, but has fallen 11% short of the projection, which I know is a very aspirational projection, and I know there is work to try to keep driving that figure upwards. Again, a 20% improvement from Q1 last year is just part of that journey. And then obviously the 0800 referrals completed within 45 days are now up to 98%, which again is one of those our service level performance indicators that we do look at, and that number again keeps improving, and it's 8% higher than the projection. In the protection strategic theme, you'll notice that the number of high-risk audits delivered, the risk-based inspection programme, has increased by 226%. And I think that one is a really big win for the Fire and Rescue Service in South Wales, because again, it was an area of concern highlighted in the HMI CFRS report about our risk-based inspection programme. So again, the projection of 250 was set to ensure that the service could get through 3,000 properties in 3 years. And the fact that it's 33% higher than that as well it just shows that we're clawing back a little bit of the performance that hasn't been met in the previous quarters. And the number of automatic fire alarms attended as well is up 5%, and that's one again we have in there because obviously we went through the AFA response policies, so it's just keeping an eye on that to make sure that number is not creeping significantly higher in the upcoming years. The response key performance indicators that are Welsh Government focused. Again, you'll see significant reductions in fires, so 25% reduction in fire this quarter compared to the corresponding quarter of last. And I think the key one here to mention, I think we have mentioned this in previous meetings, the number of other special service calls has increased by 17% and is 34% of the projection. And that's primarily driven by the affecting entry and exit calls. And I know that one's rooted in certain conversations we're having with the police at the moment. And the number of all fire deaths and injuries is 63% lower than it was the corresponding quarter of last year. And I've looked into the figures again, and it's gone from 2 deaths to 1, 6 serious injuries to 4, and then 19 slight injuries to 5. So again, reductions across the board there. There's indicator in the additional response ones that is a calls challenge / not attended, which has been given a poor performance. But I've looked at that one again, and because obviously the number of calls we received are significantly less, that has lowered the ability to challenge calls and not attend them. So that one is a poor performing indicator, but actually the control room operators are challenging possibly a higher percentage of calls than they were the corresponding quarter of last year. There's not many more. In terms of communication and engagement, the key performance indicator itself is a yearly review of our annual consultation. But I think the reason I mention that is obviously we've got the community risk management plan coming up in Q3. So significant work's been done to look at a stakeholder management plan and a really robust consultation programme that's associated with the CRMP. I know ACFO Ward White was mentioning that in a meeting this morning in terms of trying to publish the report and have the consultation live towards Q3 of the year. So it's just that'll gear up towards that one. I think the last one I'll touch on is valuing our people. Obviously, these indicators are key, and we've talked in several meetings around our people-related stats. The first 3 are around absences and employee sickness. And again, you'll see there that compared to corresponding last quarter, the same quarter of last year, the reduction in all of them in terms of employees with absence, days of shift loss to sickness, and absences as long term. So again, the significant decreases there. And I think I will mention again, the disciplinary cases average time to resolve has increased, but I've been given narrative that there are some complex cases on the go at the moment. Again, there are a lot of indicators there. Again, I won't go through every single one of them, but I think I'm more than happy to take questions at this point, Commissioners, if that's okay.
Diolch, Wayne. I mean, there are other things to go back on, but what absolutely stands out to me is one of the last things you said in point 9, valuing our people. Point B, day shifts lost to sickness, good, and there's a 22% change. We are the worst performing service for sickness in the United Kingdom. Is this some light at the end of a long tunnel? Because we couldn't be any worse than we are, and yet this is down as good. Answers on a postcard, please. I mean, we're that bad at sickness levels, and yet this is down as good. I don't understand it.
Yeah, I can take that one. So in terms of the success criteria we reviewed it against the corresponding quarter of last year. So I think I think in terms of good here, it's in terms of direction of travel compared to the corresponding quarter of last year. That's probably why as well in the other meetings, certainly in the people committee, we do benchmark with other services and we find that a completely important and separate piece of work. But I think here it's just to give the assurances that we are driving things in the right direction in terms of what we can control here. So you say the day shift lot of sickness being 22% lower than it was at this time last year, I think gives us that assurances that things are going in the right direction for us. But again, I think I've spoken to the ACFO, Alison Reid, you know, in the people committee, that broader view will keep getting brought to you, because like you said there, it's all well and good improving at home and doing what you're doing, but how are you compared to the rest of the UK and the rest of Wales? And as you said before, to be top of that, unfortunately, league table it isn't great. But again, if we address things closer to home and bring it down here, then hopefully we'll start to see ourselves moving down that league table on UK level.
Okay, and that's the validity of looking at this in detail of KPIs, you know, to make sure that we're keeping the finger on the pulse, to make sure that we are improving, because unless we have these details, unless we have these figures, we have no assurance that we are improving. So I guess, you know, 22% is the right direction, but we're going to need to do a heck of a lot more, because currently we're something like 3 times the UK average, and that's unsustainable. Kirsty.
Thank you very much. First of all, Wayne, thank you very much for the paper. I think this is a big step forward in being able to provide assurance around day-to-day activity and impact within the service. Just 3 points from me. A very general one. The narrative is useful, but I wonder whether the next time this report comes, where we have got a red rating, whether there is a list of actions that are being taken, because seeing the red rating is fine. We know we're off, but what's not clear then is like, what are the actions associated? What's the organisation going to do to get that back on track? I wonder whether you've given any consideration, and it won't be suitable for all metrics, but whether there would be merit in some of the metrics using statistical process control charts, and whether any consideration is being given to that, and whether that could be introduced. As I said, it wouldn't be suitable for every metric, but for some metrics, I think the use of SPC actually would be helpful to both the service and to the commissioners. And then finally, you know, there's much good stuff going on here, isn't there? But perhaps inevitably, when you look at things like this, you look at the bits that are not so good. And one of the things that jumped out to me, and apologies, you know, we've tried so hard on the AFA in the last couple of years, and then AFA pops up here as not doing as well as we had anticipated, and I'm just interested in why we believe that is the case. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I've probably got a couple of points. So the first one you mentioned about the reds. Home fire safety is one of those which jumped out to me, which is showing quite a deficit. I checked during the meeting. Those performance stats have increased quite significantly. So again, through the monthly performance data, I'm now able to address these issues and take corrective action. So we're now up to 6,916 following the report. We are still 505 short over that 4-month period, but across all stations, all watches, that isn't significant. They've all been instructed. You catch up, and you catch up really quickly, so that the figure's going to catch up quite fast. In terms of the AFA, we always expected a spike, and what is really critical now, particularly from where I moved from one department to the other, that we need to maintain the pressure and the focus on that particular area. That area is going to be an ongoing concern, because you will find ways, particularly the call centres, of mobilising or having us mobilise. So for me, it's just making sure that it's maintained high in the agenda for Mark and business fire safety. But there was always an expectation this is going to increase this nationally. And the increase as well is coming through alarms in domestic dwellings in terms of your shared occupancy buildings. So we know it's going to happen. I think it's just making sure that we have processes in place to continue to monitor this particular area.
Commissioner, can I come in as well to deal with your point about a narrative be useful and what actions we're going to do as a result of red ratings? So as Wayne explained earlier, this meeting unfortunately was out of sync with the meetings, the quarterly meetings, which are chaired by the Deputy Chief Fire Officer. And I think it's a really good point. And I think what my paper to the Board of Commissioners did earlier was it got those meetings back into sync. So have those pre-meetings, and I think those pre-meetings we can now make sure that the deputy is aware that as part of that meeting he needs to identify the actions for all red ratings, and those can appear in these reports going forward. So I absolutely take that on board, and I think if we'd had a bit more time we might have been able to come back to you in a bit more detail. The metrics, I confess I didn't recognise that description, but I will certainly make sure we look into whether those metrics you mentioned would help. I'm sure Wayne has more knowledge of those than I do.
So the strategic control charts, the process control charts, they're something I think my planning, performance and risk manager is a huge advocate of, and I think the key for this is as we transition to Power BI. So the aspiration for the service would be to have a live, living, breathing dashboard of these as data points. But the key for that would be the level beneath. So I think what I'd like to get to a point, certainly digitally, that I have all 40 now, or 84 key performance indicators on a page. But it's the so what, so the page that drops underneath it. And I think the key to that then is that's where you have your control charts and your process control charts, your what does that mean? And what I'd like to do in the meetings then with the Deputy Chief Fire Officer is any indicator that is a point of discussion, let's go to the level behind. Because I think for me, with key performance indicators and RAG ratings, they're just to draw your eye and to draw your attention for a further conversation. Again, that conversation started. So that transition to Power BI, I know we'll have the mechanisms. And I think the plan then would be to have officers taking you on a journey as to why that indicator is where it is, and more importantly, what they're doing about it. So that transition to Power BI, I know we've got a hard deadline of the 17th of March, 2027, but I hope to get that prototype in front of you long before then. And I think the other thing then would be engaged with what I bring to you in terms of the format of the report, because appreciating that the report is a static written document. We may be in a position where, down the line we can get a dashboard up and take ourselves through that live version of it, which we're more comfortable doing. Of course, the information is sanitised and it's any GDPR restrictions. But yeah, certainly, Commissioner, I completely agree with you. It's the so what goes on underneath it and picking it apart. But I think that the challenge is that with the 49 key performance indicators is keeping the report relatively concise for a public audience without going into, because again, I think I could I'm sure we could go into this in extreme detail, but just having the available and bringing the right things to you, couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and us having the assurance, Wayne, that these things are being dealt with, that is the key for us and for the public. Okay, they're just not figures on a page, but you're doing something about it. Kirsty.
Thank you all. That's a really great explanation answer to the questions. I wonder, Wayne, whether we would all be comfortable where it's the red KPI, so we report by exception. So where things are going okay, they don't need to be escalated, but where things are significantly off track, those are the ones that need to be escalated. Which makes it from a public perspective a little bit more manageable. I mean, it's a difficult balance, isn't it? Because you also want the public to be assured that actually things are going well. And sometimes if we just focus on the by exception, it does look as if it's all bad when actually lots of stuff will have been performed. But perhaps we can pick that up outside of this meeting. But it's I think this is like a really a good step forward for us today. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a really good idea, Kirsty. And I would say if we link it back to actions, the action point 5 of the agenda, we could have a bit, Wayne, where the green stuff is you know, this is there for information and for the public domain, but we focus on the red stuff.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think you're right. And I think certainly where we have picked up areas of performance or performance concerns, it'd be important to bring back to you that that is going in the right direction if it is as well. So there may be some in terms of what were red moving into green we probably need to bring up as well. And I'm aware the monitoring officers mentioned as well the Welsh Government statutory indicators as well, where we probably need to bring them into the forum regardless to have an overview of the domain. But I agree with you again. There's a lot of these, there may not always be value in bringing you things that are going in the right direction all the time or that are monitored. So yeah, definitely this will be I'm more than happy to take feedback with every. I mean, this is the second version of this report, but I'm more than happy to keep tinkering and refining the formula until you get the assurances you need.
Yeah, because it's all about, it's a so what for us. Yeah, so what are you doing about it? That's what governance is about. Bringing the issues to us and us interrogating that we know and we are satisfied that the issues are being dealt with appropriately by the organisation. Thank you, Wayne. Diolch. Okay, if there's nothing further from anyone else on this, I'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the strategic risk report, and I believe it's Wayne again. Thank you.
Yes, it is me again. So again, this report again is a report that I bring in quarterly, so by now you will be familiar with it. And again, it talks about obviously the service maintains a strategic register of risks, and it does include a list of actions that control that risk, and that we obviously robustly manage that risk in-house. The report talks then about how the organisation has a strategic risk assurance forum, which is a monthly meeting where we discuss the risk register and we discuss any pressing issues. We take deep dives on risks, and we obviously look at whether the risk register reflects what are currently the things that are at the most risk of affecting our ability to deliver our operational core business. So the report again it's a July snapshot of a report. Again, we try and avoid talking about quarters because again we've got a monthly rhythm with the strategic risk register at the moment. So this again is the July report. And at the moment, we've got 37 live risks on the strategic risk register. And of these, 22 are rated as high, 13 are rated as medium, and 2 are rated as low. So there's changes since the last version I have brought you. So there are 7 new strategic risks, and they are listed within the report. They'll be primarily around site security, terrorism, budgets, and general industrial relations, which again are the things that we're working so hard to manage and keep going in the right direction. Two existing risks were renamed, but again, they were relatively aesthetic changes. One risk was downgraded to a departmental risk, and one was closed. So again, it leaves us at 37 risks. And I think, again, I won't go through them all, but what we've done again in the Strategic Risk Forum is look at whether the risk register is an accurate reflection of what keeps people awake at night, or the things that causes the most disruption, and the ones that I would say I think we clearly have a top 6 risks that have emerged, scoring 48 points, and they are deaths of serious injury, industrial action, workplace sexual harassment, responding to a terrorist incident, marauding terrorist attack, and safeguarding. And again, those are the things where in our meetings we will discuss what do they mean to us and what are we doing about them. So the report then, again, it is a very detailed report, I think, because the register has increased in size, and prior to us moving on to the new way of doing this, there's pretty much a page per risk. We talk about ownership, we talk about if this happens, and we talk then about the consequence, we talk about the rationale behind the scoring, and we talk about what controls are in place and whether we think they're effective. And again, that does take quite a lot of space. I think the other key part, I think, with this report, and I think it's been alluded to a few times, is obviously we're now moving to a completely different way of managing risks. So we're working with obviously a consultant called Resilium UK, and again we've been discussing moving from what is essentially a relatively static 5x16 way of looking at what we believe are risks to more of a barrier-based bow tie method. And I think the key, we're making some significant progress in this area. So the progress we've made obviously since the last meeting is the concept of barrier-based bow tie model has been introduced to the service. So again, we've been having significant consultancy hours. The consultants have presented to our senior leadership team, and we've started that proof of concept to see if it does work for what we need it to, and it's working very well. We've purchased a computer system so that enables bow ties to be developed, and again, that's been a massive help, because developing them on Excel doesn't really allow you to be dynamic enough, because again, the key with barrier effectiveness is not just giving it a score, it's attaching evidence as to why you've given the score, and the system makes that a lot easier. So again, it makes it easier to copy existing ones rather than having to start again. But again, it's just being able to attach evidence. And I think we've noticed in the past that, I think you mentioned the difference between reassurance and assurance is it's not just us giving it an arbitrary score, it's being able to attach, if it's a policy, a copy of the policy and what we're doing exactly in every area. The consultancy area hours at the moment are being used to ensure that the planning, performance and risk team are being taught how to analyse risks using the bow tie method. We've realised that while we've got consultancy hours, they won't last forever. And again, they are, as you can imagine, relatively expensive. So the key investment at the moment is there's a team of 4 people who are being taught how to do this. So obviously when we do those consultancy hours, when they do step away, then we've got that resilience in service to be able to sit and workshop things through the bow tie method. The method sounds very complex, but I think the key is having someone at the front in a workshop who can help get your ideas into the right way of doing it. I think it's the right facilitator in those meetings can actually make the method seem quite straightforward, because it takes what's worrying you and puts it into more of the difficulties, putting it into the right structure and working out the level of what to put what you need to. And I think recently as well, we used the model as a proof of concept to look at an overseas trip, the cadets. So again, the Chief Fire Officer wanted additional assurance that the cadets trip abroad would be managed safely. So we used the bow tie methods to try and map out the current risk assessment around the trip, and it turned out it provided significant assurance. I believe that was presented to yourselves as well as a proof of concept. So it was really useful to be able to use something that we're trialling to look at something that obviously is very important to us as an organisation, and show visualize it in a different way, but actually get the same assurances, and actually highlighting all the great work the cadet team had done actually to make the trip a success. But that was a big step for us to be able to take a real life problem and take it through the bow tie method to get the assurances. And upcoming work in that field then, so obviously we're hoping by Q3 of this year, the current risk register will be transferred fully to a bow tie method of management. The early indicators show that you'll probably be able to look at 7 strategic level bow ties, and everything that we do now on the current risk register will feature at some way in the bow tie, whether it will be a barrier itself or a condition of a barrier. But again, all that will become clear when we take through the mechanism itself. And a safety management system that goes with it as well. So again, it's all well and good having this in-house, but it's having a guidance document, a version of the truth as to what risk means to us, and that'll have definitions, roles, responsibilities, and a bit of guidance in there as well. So that's where the focus is now. Again, I have a team who are relatively well versed in the bow tie method, so now it's just a case of documenting what it means and what we want it to look like as a service, and then getting this strategic level risk registered, transferred onto something that aligns to that process. But again, I appreciate it's a very, very detailed report, so at this point I'm more than happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Wayne. Yes, it is a detailed report, but a very important one. And we were shown the bow tie method and how it works in relation to the accident issue, actually, which was very reassuring to see that the way that this now works is, consonant with good practice elsewhere. And I'm very pleased to hear that officers are being trained in appropriate methods. Sometimes, consultants need to be brought in when such specialism is required by the organisation. You mentioned about the monthly meeting. I'm assuming as you move to more of a live document, it would mean that things could be amended and changed on a daily basis, because the very nature of the service is that things change. I referenced earlier the Gwyler de Garth incident yesterday. Who on earth would have thought that would have happened? I certainly wouldn't. That flooding incident happened in the middle of a drought. So my question is, will this be a live document that's updated more regularly and not left to a monthly update meeting?
Yes, Commissioner, 100%. And I think one of the things with the barrier method will be it'll be updating it as and when evidence or as and when risk becomes noted and important. And the hope is obviously in time is to delegate some of the autonomy for some of the barriers to officers, to the SMEs, the subject matter experts. So again, what we're hoping that will do is actually, as work becomes relevant or as a barrier becomes stronger or what have you, they'll be edited that dynamically. So yeah, the plan is to keep this as a living, breathing document. And as you're aware, that if certain risks become more to the forefront, then they'll need to be updated as and when. And I think that's why having the capability of the team is so important as well, because with the working example, if the department does have concerns or the department really wants their bow tie taken through its paces, we can have a meeting with them as well. So they can do it themselves, they can update barriers on a barrier by barrier basis, but actually they can get the team in now. We've got, again, that capability to go through the whole bow tie and say, you tell us what's worrying, we'll make it actually into the barrier-based model. So yeah, 100%, it'll be a dynamic, living and breathing risk register. That's the aim.
Okay, thank you so much. Kirsty, please.
Thank you. I think it's a really useful document. I think the approach is becoming more and more sophisticated. There was just, would it be appropriate to ask Wayne you a question about the content? I'm conscious that, this is everybody's area of specialism is covered in these. I was just wondering about whether there was an update on the airwave risk.
I don't know. Mike, do you have any knowledge of that?
Is that the case?
It's Paul's risk, and I'm aware he's not in the room. I'll pick it. I tell you what, I can pick it up with him outside of the meeting because he'd be the right person to ask. But thank you.
I know there was an action, Commissioner. So
thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing further on that, then Wayne, thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing the continued progress on this. I'll move now to the next point on the agenda, the counter fraud, bribery, corruption and economic crime risk assessment. Liam, I believe it's you.
It is, thanks, Chair. Catchy title to this paper. So I'll take you to paragraphs 2.2 and 3.3 first, which set out the reason for the paper. So during a counter fraud assurance review carried out by Steen and his team, the internal auditors flagged that a fraud risk assessment needed to be undertaken to ensure that the service was compliant with the Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act 2023. And I know that Amanda got some legal advice in terms of whether we were captured by that piece of legislation as well. And the feedback was that we were. So that makes it a criminal offence for failure to prevent fraud. And it applies to large organisations operating in the UK. An important distinction with this Act is that it's intended to tackle fraud offences that intend to benefit the organisation, whereas a lot of our policies and procedures are designed with preventing fraud will have a detrimental impact on the service. So it's taking a different lens and looking at our policies in that way. Moving on then to paragraph 4.3, I have carried out an initial fraud risk assessment across the service, and that's included in the table there at the bottom of page 140, going on to 141. And that shows the inherent risks alongside some of the key controls we've got in place. So the three highest residual risks, I would say, for us around fraud are procurement fraud, purchasing card and fuel card misuse, and the fraudulent claiming of sick leave with our sickness levels, as we've discussed quite a lot today. So that action plan or risk assessment, sorry, sets that out in that table. And from that, I've developed a fraud risk action plan, and that's included at Appendix 1. So the key items that I wanted to draw out of that, the first few actions are around reviewing our policies, particularly in light of the new legislation and the different lens that needs to be added to that. There is some specific wording around that legislation that will need to be added, but we'll do a full review of those policies at the same time. There is a couple of actions on there around training and raising awareness, so mandatory fraud awareness training for staff. And then I think it's in November, there is a national or international fraud awareness week. So we'll make sure we work with the comms team to raise awareness of that. Some networking opportunities as well through joining the National Anti-Fraud Network so that we can share learning and best practice with other organisations, and explore signing up to the National Fraud Initiative as well. And then finally, the fraud risk assessment that is within this paper, capturing that within your action plan so that becomes an annual reminder to carry that out. And then finally on page 147, what I found lacking potentially from the documentation I reviewed is being clear on what the different roles and responsibilities in relation to fraud is. So that's captured on page 147, and it takes yourselves as commissioners, the Chief Fire Officer, ELT, myself, the Monitoring Officer, the soon-to-be established Governance and Audit Committee, which is going to be the follow-on from this committee, specific employees, and then internal and external audit as well. We had Audit Wales on the call this morning, the Board of Commissioners, where they mentioned that they were coming in September to undertake a review in this area. So I think this paper and the resulting actions, you'll see many of them are focused in Q2, which should hopefully put us in a good position by the time that audit comes around to respond well to it. But it also gives us an opportunity to take any learnings from that and further strengthen this action plan. If there's anything that we haven't captured that comes out from Audit Wales, then we can build that into the action plan going forward. So yeah, hopefully a stronger position around a pretty critical area for us, and we will see what Audit Wales have to say when they come in September.
Mm-hmm. So it's bringing us into line with other public organisations then, Liam, to make sure that because we're an organisation of a certain size, that we are covering our responsibilities in this area, yeah?
So I think on the new legislation, yes. I think the Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act, there was a question mark over whether we were captured by it or not. And Amanda commissioned some advice that we were. What I would say is carrying out an annual fraud risk assessment, having a fraud risk action plan shouldn't be linked to that new legislation. That should just be happening as a matter of course.
Yeah.
So that was almost the catalyst for me to go and have a look at it. But these are things that we should have in place anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Okay. Kirsty, any comment? No? Okay. Any comments from any officers, Amanda, anything to add?
Staines got his hand up.
Yeah,
Just linking the work that's going on ongoing with risk, maybe in future iterations the risk assessment, maybe that program approach can be useful. I think there's a more rich data in terms of risk assessment.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, good. Good. Again, dotting the I's and crossing the T's on this. Good. Well, it's a good addition to the catalogue of what we do and the way in which we operate. And again, public assurance that we're doing the job as best as we can within no corruption, bribery, despite whatever. I'll just leave it at that. Okay, so we're moving on to a Register of Gifts and Hospitality. Amanda.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, a very short report from me. We just every year report to you Register of Gifts and Hospitality, either accepted or declined during the financial year. The background is that we have a procedure in this respect. and all staff are to record any gifts and hospitality, whether they accept them or decline them. But they then have to refer that up to me for my sign-off if that item, that gift or hospitality exceeds £25. So the Annex 1 contains the items that I have been notified of over the last year, and you will see a lot of them related to donations which were received at a station for organising an elderly, vulnerable people Christmas dinner, I believe.
Yeah.
So those appear there. And before this meeting, I did mention to Leanne that maybe this is a good time to send out a reminder to everyone about compliance with this, because of all the wildfires and activity that's going on. The community are increasingly coming up and offering firefighters hospitality and things to try and help. So we just need to make sure we're on top of this. So happy to take any questions.
Yeah. No, I mean, and you know, and these are all, I mean, what's reported to us today are all very, very community focused and community minded events. And so our thanks to the officers who are engaged in this. But it's right to note, Amanda, that people need to be aware that that these things have to be reported. But yeah, it's a very positive document, this. There we are. Anything from anyone else? No. Okay, so agenda item 13, forward work programme.
Yes, that will become the Governance and Audit Committee. I need to do some more work with the Governance Review team and start to think about what the forward work plan should contain, because we are having a slight shift from the previous version, Finance and Audit. So I want to make sure that the items in these future agendas are absolutely right, because I think other papers are going to the Board of Commissioners instead. So I just need to work with Liam on that. But as soon as I've got something to share with you, I will share.
Okay, in that case, agenda item 14, to consider any items of business deemed urgent. I haven't had anything. No. And then in that case, item 15, items to report back to Board of Commissioners. Well, I'd just like to put on record in this meeting our sincere thanks to Carl Fuchs, who it's his final day today as a commissioner, and the extraordinary work that he's done with us, and his knowledge, expertise and understanding of blue light services is beyond compare. I shall miss him dreadfully because he's the go-to guy for so many answers that we need before we come to you and do what we try and do in this role as commissioners. So I wish him all the very best, and we are at the better place that we're at because of his expertise and investment in the role of commissioner. So I just wanted that recorded for our thanks to him.
Thank you. Yes, Mia's been typing rapidly as you said that. So it'll appear in the minutes. Okay, if there's nothing further, thank you very much. Thank you for moving the appointment on half an hour. And it's a dangerous precedent because it shows I can actually chair when I'm not in the room. So if you want me out of the way, then mess up my diary and put an appointment forward, and I'll share online in future. But it also, quite seriously, it shows that if I am stuck in Westminster, I can take part in stuff remotely. I'm sure there was a great sigh of relief at that. but there we are. Anyway. Okay, so it just leaves me to say thank you very much, everybody, for the meeting. Thank you very much, everyone, for the papers. Well prepared and hopefully well regulated by my fellow commissioner and myself. And thank you and have a good weekend. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your
Thank you.
efforts. Thank you.
Bye.